We're solving quadratics, right? When we have a quadratic equal to 0, like you see here, we're solving. So we have solved by factoring. We've solved by graphing. Now we're going to solve by using the quadratic formula, which is this guy right here. Do you remember it? Did I sing this to you this week? I sang it to one of my classes. Pop goes the weasel. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Nothing? What? Not a hand? Like, good job, Mrs. Verhoeven? No, okay, whatever. I'm kidding. Okay, so quadratic formula gets a little hairy just because there's so many numbers and so many pluses and minuses and negatives, and that's usually where the problem lies, okay, is in what did we actually plug into the calculator. So I really need you on this lesson to take your time because it shouldn't be a hard lesson, but people always do it wrong because of just the computation of it, okay? So take your time, do a good job. I believe you will kill it. You've done this before, right? Has anyone not seen the quadratic formula before? You should have seen it in Algebra 1. Okay. So we're just going to walk through how to solve using this formula. The reason we do the quadratic formula, here's the thing. The quadratic formula, while annoying because of all the pieces, is the one that will always work. So if ever you're like, I don't know if that factors, the quadratic formula will work, okay? Factoring doesn't always work. Graphing works, but sometimes you get these crazy huge graphs. This always works. So when in doubt, you can do the quadratic formula. What you need to be clear on, and maybe you want to write this at the start of each problem, is what is your A and what is your B and what is your C. Pay attention to the fact that this is a negative B, just like we did negative B over 2A, right? You had to change the sign of your B value. Same thing here. What does this plus or minus mean for our answer? There's two. Right? There are going to be two answers because you're going to have to add that radical and you're going to have to subtract that radical, and you're going to get two answers out of that 99% of the time. So keep that in mind. Here's what we're going to do. For this first one, okay, my A value is what? 2. My B value? Not X. -1, right? And my C value is -4. So maybe at the beginning of the problem, you just want to write that down. A is 2, B is -1, C is -4. You don't have to. I don't require that. But some of you are going to miss negatives because you're just rushing through. And this might help you not miss the negative, okay? So write down your A, your B, your C, and then all you have to do from there is plug into this quadratic formula. So I'm actually going to just take a little copy and paste of this and put it right here so I can show you exactly what I'm plugging in. All right, so if this is our setup, we're going to say a negative B. What is negative B right now? It's not -1. It's a +1, right? Because B is -1. So we're saying the opposite of -1, which is a +1. So this is 1 plus or minus the square root. Now here's the other big thing. This number, if I wanted to be safe, I would always put in parentheses, even if it's positive, okay? Because as a negative, it must be in parentheses when you plug it into your calculator. So maybe just to be safe, you always put it in parentheses, or maybe you only put the negatives in parentheses, but as a negative, it must be in parentheses.
When would it ever not be in parentheses?
In this setup, never.
Okay.
It will always be in parentheses, this B value. I mean, if it's a positive, you don't need the parentheses, right? But technically, we're saying that number squared. So parentheses squared. All right, then it's -4 times my A value of 2 times my C value of -4 all over 2 times what? 2. Okay, so I feel like most people can do this, where they plug the numbers in correctly. The issue comes on our next step, where we try to figure out what does that mean. What values do we get? So take your time on this. I would love it right now if you would try to plug this into your calculator. Okay, so get your calculator out and plug that in, because I want to see if you're doing it right before I tell you any more. I'm going to wait till everyone gets a chance to try it. Plug that into your calculator. And I would plug it in exactly how you see it, with parentheses and all. What'd you get? Just what's under the radical. 33. Everybody else get 33? What'd you get? Oh, are you saying you got 33? It should be 33. Okay? You're plugging in parentheses -1, parentheses squared minus 4. Now, you can do times 2 times -4, or you can do parentheses, but you absolutely need these parentheses. Okay? If you don't do parentheses around your -1 squared, you're going to get the wrong answer every time. So, parentheses matter. Okay, so right now we're at 1 plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4. Okay, here's where you can kind of split ways. You need two answers. 1 plus the square root of 33 over 4, and 1 minus the square root of 33 over 4. Okay, here's what I do. You don't have to do it this way, but you avoid a lot of errors if you do it this way. Type in this, and then hit enter, and then divide by 4. Okay? Type in this, hit enter, and then divide by 4. Okay? We are going to round. Oh, you know what? I'm just kidding. We're going to leave them in simplest radical form. I'm kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm doing a different lesson. There will come a time where we will plug in and get a decimal. It's not right now. My bad. So if this is our setup, right, these are the answers we're getting, you are allowed to just write it like this, okay? There is nothing that simplifies 1 over 4, rad 33 over 4, that doesn't simplify. So you don't need this. Yes, these are the two answers, but you may write your two answers like this, plus or minus. Okay? Good on that one? Okay. Go to letter B. Do you see what you need to do first on this one? Yeah, set it equal to 0. So 2x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay? I'm going to have you try this one on your own. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Give that a go. Plug that into the quadratic formula. See what you get. Anyone have an answer yet? So your negative b should be a positive 2, right? Plus or minus, did you get your square root? Square root of what? 28. It should have been this, right? Negative 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. And when you plug that in, you get 2 plus or minus the square root of 28 over what? 4. 2 times 2, so over 4. Are you done? No. Simplest, yeah, Sarah.
Where did the 4 come from? The negative 4.
That's just part of the equation, right? It's minus 4 times A times C. That's the 4 you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Not the bottom one. Okay, so this one, simplest radical form, we can do something with this. This would be the square root of 4 and the square root of 7. So that's 2 rad 7. So we're saying 2 plus or minus 2 rad 7 over 4. Are you done now? You can reduce, right? So this, everything's divisible by 2. So this would be 1 plus or minus 1 rad 7, which I'm just going to call rad 7, over what? 2, right? If everything is divisible by 2, you got to divide that 4 by 2 also. So that would be your 2 answers. 1 plus the square root of 7 over 2 and 1 minus the square root of 7 over 2. Okay, so simplest radical form, which is why we did what we did yesterday. Simplifying a bunch of radicals, right? Okay, look at this one. Letter C here. We're saying x equals a negative b, so negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared. Technically, you don't need parentheses around that, but I'm just playing it safe here. Minus 4, what's your a value? 1. And then your c value? 9. Okay. All over 2 times your a value of 1. So that's your initial setup. What do you get when you plug this into your calculator? 0. Stephen got it. So this is negative 6 plus or minus 0 over 2. Can anyone tell me what that means? Thank you. What does that do for us? Negative 6 plus or minus 0 over 2. How many answers do we have? Only 1, right? Because if I go negative 6 plus 0 divided by 2, that's negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. If I go negative 6 minus 0 over 2, that's also a negative 3. So your answer is just x equals negative 3. And if you think about that, this one was factorable. You can see that when you factor it too, right? It would just be x plus 3 squared. So a negative 3 would be your only answer. So just be aware you can get one answer if this is 0. Okay, if it's not 0, you'll get a different set of answers, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Okay, next thing, this says you sell CDs. The profit is represented by the equation that you see there, where P is profit and X is the price of each CD. What would you need to make a profit of 200? Okay, so that's our P. So we're going to plug 200 in right here. I didn't leave you a lot of room there, did I? Let's just plug it in. So 200 equals a negative x squared plus 48x minus 300. What do we have to do to be able to solve this? What? Yeah, set it equal to 0. So you're going to take away the 200. So you get 0 equals a negative x squared plus 48x minus 500. Okay. And then from there, now you can plug it into your equation. So this is the one scenario when it's a real world problem and we're talking about dollars and cents. Simplest radical form doesn't make sense, right? So this is the scenario where you'd actually plug it into your calculator. And I'm actually going to move up here because I just didn't give you a lot of room. Sorry about that. So this will be x equals, what is a negative b right now? Negative 48 plus or minus the square root b squared, so 48 squared minus 4. What's your a value? Negative 1. And your c value is negative 500 all over 2 times a negative 1. Okay, so here's what I would do. I would take this information and plug it into your calculator, what do you get? 304 is what you should be getting. So this is negative 48 plus or minus the square root of 304 over negative 2. Okay, so here's where I want you to plug it in. Plug into your calculator, negative 48 plus the square root of 304, hit enter, and then divide by negative 2. Okay, and then plug in negative 4 minus the square root of 304, hit enter, and then divide by negative 2. Think about what we're talking about here. This is money, right? It's the cost of a CD. So you should be getting 2 answers. What's one of them? Dollars and cents. What's one? 15. Anyone got it? If you added, it should have been 15.28. Yes? Did you get that? Negative? It should have been positive. Did you divide by a negative 2?
Yeah. I got negative 56.71. Yeah, that was awesome.
Okay, you're plugging something in wrong. Go negative 48 plus the square root of 304, enter. And then divide by negative 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to do this enter here.
Okay.
You got it? Okay. So this is one answer. What'd you get for the minus answer then? So negative 48 minus the square root of 304, hit enter, and then divide by negative 2. $32.72. Okay, so they're saying, what would you have to charge for a $200 profit? Which one of those do you think is the answer we want?
32.
Well, is anyone going to pay that much money for a CD? No, that's just unreasonable, right? So this would be the most reasonable answer. You could try to charge 32 and hopefully you make a lot of money, but your amount of sales is probably not going to be as great because you're charging way too much for a CD. So I would say 15.28 is your better bet there. Questions on that? Okay, last thing, and these go pretty quick, is what's called the discriminant. So the discriminant is part of the quadratic formula. And instead of telling you what the solution is when we solve a quadratic, this tells you how many solutions you should have, okay? So doesn't tell you what your answers are, but how many answers you'll have, okay? And if you look here, the discriminant is the part that we've been plugging into your calculator first. It's the b squared minus 4ac, okay? So here's what I want you to see. When your discriminant, when this number is positive, okay, so b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, your graph, if you were to graph it, would look like the ones you see here. And our solutions are always intercepts, right? They're x-intercepts. Well, there's one here and one here, or there's one here and one here. So you're going to get 2 real solutions. The reason we say real is we're going to get into imaginary numbers soon. And you can have imaginary numbers, but you will have 2 real numbers, okay? So we'll get into that later. In other words, you'll have 2 x-intercepts if it's a positive discriminant. If your discriminant is 0, which we just saw up here, okay, when our discriminant was, which one was that? 0, okay, when this came out to 0, how many answers did we get? 1, because you're adding 0 or subtracting 0, which is just going to get you 1. So you'll have 1 real solution or 1 x-intercept. And when your discriminant is negative, you get no real solutions and no x-intercepts. because of this, right? If we're taking the square root of a negative number, if you plug that into your calculator, what does your calculator tell you? You've done something wrong. Error, right? Syntax error. You cannot take the square root of a negative and get a real solution. You can get imaginaries. They're fun. They're coming next week. But you cannot get real solutions, okay? So you will get no real solutions if it's negative. If it's 0, you'll get 1 real solution. If it's positive, you'll get 2 real solutions, okay? So that's what they're going to ask you about here, is determine the number of real solutions. Do you need to plug in the whole quadratic formula? No. All you need to plug into is b squared minus 4ac. So b squared right now, what is b? B is -3, so we're going -3 squared. Don't forget the parentheses, please. Minus 4, what's your a? The 2, and your c is 7, okay? Plug that into your calculator exactly how you see it. -3 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7. What do you get? -47. Okay, so if my discriminant is a negative, how many real solutions are there? None. You cannot take the square root of a negative, right? So we would say no real solutions. Okay, so I want to know the discriminant and I want to know how many solutions from that. All right, so b, again, b squared minus 4ac, that would be -3 squared minus 4 times -2 times 5. What do you get when you plug that into your calculator?
49.
You all getting 49? Parentheses matter, right? Keep those parentheses, these ones you can just do times. But you get 49. So how many real solutions do you get if your discriminant is 49? 2, right? That's this guy. 2 real solutions. You guess what this last discriminant is going to equal? 0. We got to move this over, right? So x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 0. So if you do b squared, that's -14 squared minus 4 times a times c. Plug that into your calculator. It comes out to 0. Okay. How many real solutions? 1 real solution. Okay. The book is going to say how many real solutions and how many x-intercepts. It's always the same number. So if there's 1 real solution, there's 1 x-intercept. If there's 2 real solutions, there's 2 x-intercepts, right? Those are your solutions, are the x-intercepts. And that is it. Any questions on that?